What is a warrior heart?
Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers,
We're therapists.
and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
Brannon, what's up, man?
Not much. How's it going?
Going good, dude. I'm excited about today's podcast.
Are you?
Yeah.
This is right down your alley.
Yeah,
this is your thing.
This is my favorite thing.
Yeah. So maybe we just dive in pretty quickly. I don't want to waste time.
Right in. Let's just jump right in. Yeah.
Well, do you want to introduce our guest?
So we actually are really fortunate today, you guys. We have Stephen Shields with us. He is a professional counselor, owns his own practice. It's called Accepted. And then he's also on the board with an organization called Warrior Heart, which puts on men's retreats. And we have the gift today of being able to have a couple of things happen here. Stephen is willing to kind of share his own journey as it relates to the reclamation of his own heart, his own recovery, and then talk a little bit about that idea of what an actual warrior heart is from both the professional and the personal perspective.
Yeah.
So Stephen, thank you for your willingness to come on today.
Yeah, totally. You guys are a party, so happy to join.
So just back up a little for us and give us an idea of your story. Like tell us what went down. You don't have to get way into the details of it all, but fill us in.
Yeah, so that's the way I like to say it is I think it's really good to be vulnerable and not vomity. And so I think the vulnerable is at height of my addiction behavior. I was in pastoral leadership in my church. I'm an LDS guy, so I was in the bishopric in my ward just after being Elders Quorum president. Was an ordinance worker in the Salt Lake Temple, which everyone's got egos about that because it's the live endowment if you're LDS and all that. So it's like you memorize, like that was like the elite, right, of all the people working in the temple.
Wow.
So doing all that, right. On the other hand, I'm stealing money from the family business, hiring prostitutes, and doing a bunch of porn in between. And, classic story as we get into the heart of men, right? Like that became like the recipe for how I did life from a young age, right? Like it was like, how do I make it work? How do I know I'm enough? How do I do all this stuff? And I'm like, oh, I can get this validation from women. Real women are hard, and that's a complicated subject, but porn requires nothing of you, so that's easy, right? And then all the sexual acting out that came with that. And for me, I had an experience that I feel like I knew God and had that in my life. And so it was 2014, April of 2014. My wife was out of town with our 4-month-old daughter. I'm sitting by myself. I just done it again and hired the women and done all this acting out in this weekend. And I call it a grace moment because I would love to say and my love for God and my wife and my daughter, it's just not true. I was just so numbed out. I just couldn't even get there. But I had this grace moment that God's like, why are you doing what you're doing when you know what you know? And I'm like, so my life is going to either end up in total dumpster fire. I'm going to be some big church leader, have influence, and that's when Satan's going to expose me and the drop's going to happen. Or I can do it now and decide if I actually believe in healing, in God, all the stuff I profess. So I came forward and I remember the experience, took my wife to a therapist office, said the things. I had a bunch of sexual abuse in my family, so therapy didn't have the don't ever go, stuff on it. And so tell her all the things. She says what any woman and human being would say in that circumstance, like, I hate you, we're getting divorced, can't believe you do this to me. And I remember the therapist chased after her, and I was thinking puppies drowning in a barrel, kids starving in Africa, because I need to be emoting emotion because logically I knew how big this scenario was. Emotionally dead, numb. So logically I knew I need to look like I'm really sad when this therapist walks in here. But the truth of my heart is if you would have been like, hey, dude, you want to grab a burger? I would have been like, sure, dude, this place sucks. Let's get out of here. And so that's when I knew, I was like, what? That's when I say I knew, what my addiction cost me. And then I'm not the smartest guy, so I had kind of 3 rounds of big disclosure, and it was right after the last one. I had already started Unashamed, Unafraid. So we were podcasting hope that recovery is possible and doing, the nonprofit thing. And I'd done my first class to become a therapist. So I was in graduate school. So like the kitchen sink had been thrown at me. I had parents that were like, we'll write the check for therapy. Let's make this happen for you. Like I had the church people, I had all the things. And so the other real grace moment I had is I had acted out again. And I'm like, that's it. There's nothing else to give me. I've done all of the things. And had this grace moment with God where he was just like, look, Stephen, you're my son. The story I have for you is the story. Now, if you want to go run off again and act out, we can do this as many times as you need to so that you can know it's not conditional. I am who I am. You are who you are. And the grace and the healing is real. And however many rounds you need to do this for till you believe me, we're good. But the story's not going to change. And that was really like the cementing. It's not black and white, but that's, a 7-year history in 5 minutes. But that was really the cementing factor for me of realizing I don't have to do recovery for anyone else. I'm not here to earn anything. I'm not working my way back to a status in my church, in my marriage, in my life where I'm now worthy of love. I just am. And from that place, it was very easy that I'm like, man, this stuff's toxic. I'm not happy doing it. It's not, that's the big known about addiction, right? Everyone thinks they're happy having their cake and eating it too. And you're just not. And that's where I'd say really was the turning point for me. I'm very much a believer in recovered, meaning that I think people actually heal and don't have to be managing and looking over their shoulder. And that's where really that started for me. So that's the story in a nutshell.
That's a beautiful story. It's the kind of thing that it's like, it makes me want to go sit down with you at lunchtime and for an hour and a half and hear the whole thing, because I know there's
yeah, let's do it.
There's a couple of things inside of your story that I want to point out to our audience that I think are so important. It might lead back to some of our continued discussion here. Is the way that you just told this story wasn't, I'm sitting in the office and I had to keep doing it, so I kept my wife. You sat there and felt, man, I'm so beyond feeling, I got an issue. Like it was me going, wow, I'm beyond feeling. And then there was a wrestle with God where that was so beautiful to me that in your wrestle with God, it wasn't like God finally stepped in and said, you're awesome because you're trying so hard. God stepped in and said, you can do this as long as you want. I already have a story for you. And when you had that true full acceptance of, and I would imagine that even since then, it's been this continued growing pattern of self, of understanding your identity.
Oh, for sure.
That was the pivotal thing that really started to actually, it made recovery almost feel like just the life you want to live rather than some drudgery that you have to do to run away from your demons.
Oh, super well said.
I'd like to ask you about, that experience that you had sounds miraculous and sounds like you were prepared for it. But I want to ask you about the loss of understanding of how much God loved you. What were and you don't have to get into any details here, Stephen, but what were some of the wounding that actually made you believe things that weren't true about who you were? And it sounds like there's a pattern of this double life where you're doing really well in church, like really, really well. And, or like even in your career and your podcast, and there's this double life that shows that you're trying to get love in all the wrong ways. But like, how did you get there? Like, what were some of the wounds? What were some of the belief systems?
Yeah. So for me, I'm one of 4 children. I'm the youngest. I have 3 older sisters. So I'm the only boy. So when we talk about the masculine, right? Like I'm the guy, right? And how my family happened and the sexual abuse and the different things. I was very, if you're a therapist person, like hero child role. I was told by both my parents, like, thank you for being the one that doesn't have any problems. And they meant it in kindness, right? Like a lot of shame gets transferred in love, but it got clear, right? Like one of my woundings is I used to play these basketball tournaments in the backyard by myself. And I remember showing up to therapy and I just had this folder of these brackets of me just playing by myself. But when I played comp basketball, dad was in. And you got the Jordans, you got to travel to the tournaments. So it got real clear to me real fast. My wounding was performance equals love. People don't want you, Stephen. They want what you can do. And people have different backgrounds and lives. My problem is God put a lot of talent up in here in me. And so that equation worked for a minute and still operates some ways today that I'm like, oh, well, turns out I'm actually an excellent athlete. So if dad loves you, if you're awesome at athletics, great, because I'm a baller. So cool. Let's just do the math, right? Or, even early in my marriage, I'm like, oh, just be codependent is like out the gate and just do I can stay up till 2 a.m. and clean the entire house for you. Let's go, right? And so I had this projection everywhere I went of performance equals love. And where I got stuck a lot was I can perform it. I'm a high functioning alcoholic, like a high functioning addict, right? And so for me, I just kept falling into that trap, right? And so you get in that, even with Unashamed, we're getting emails from people. You kept me from being suicidal. I'm sitting at Warrior Heart. Dude, I'm here because of your podcast. This changed my life. And I'm like, this is the version of me that people love. This is the version of me that God loves, that he wants. And so from that early childhood on, I just had this scripting of performance equals love. And I just repeat. And that's what God kept trying to challenge and in ways still is, right? That it's not about what I can do. It's who I am. It's about the real connection.
It's amazing too that you now can actually articulate that you're living in the world where people are still now coming to you and giving you all that stuff that you used to crave and need. And I imagine it's an ongoing sort of a process for you to not slip back into that old belief system, because I love what you said. You do have all the talent, and the talent now, when God loves you and he's writing your story, is to give that freely to the lives of other people without needing them to come back and be like, Stephen, you're the man. Like, you saved my life. You did this, you did that. And you get to go, that's nice of you. Thank you. Instead of like, oh, sweet. I'm still good,
100%. So like when I speak now, I speak at our Warrior Heart event a lot and different. So something I started doing is, and I'll get my boy James or Jeremy will assist me in this. After I give the session, I won't talk to anyone. Because you get the immediate of, dude, that was amazing. You're the guy, or like, that's why I came here. That was the message I needed. I'm like, before, I'm happy to connect with you and be with you. But choosing to set aside and just be like, God, where are we at? I think I did the thing you're calling me to. I think you put me where you want. And the other thing that's been important, because if you want a God complex, become a therapist. But yes. Right, because people will tell you, you saved my life. You're the and but the other thing too is like I have kept some of my friends that have just been in my life. Like I still have a friend from high school. Shout out Corey Jones. I still have a couple friends from my real estate career, my boy Bankhead and Preston. So like I coached Little League football, flag football with my boy Preston this last year. Preston doesn't even care to talk to me about therapy land. He's like, cool, dude. Anyways, what do you think the youth's going to do this fall? And do you want to go out on my boat? Right. So like, we're just there being overly competitive about our kids playing flag football and whatever. But like, it's those moments where I'm like, he doesn't want free therapy from me. He's not looking for an Unashamed scholarship or because I have the answers. It's doing some connection in my life around that my talents don't give me anything in these relationships. Right. So, yeah.
It's interesting what you said about if you compare this need for performance, for worth, and then what God told you when you were in that really dark place of however many times you need to act out, like go for it. Like we'll figure this out together. And it's like an opposite. That's completely opposite. I love you. I'm here for you. If you need to go learn more, go learn more. And that, I mean, that right there is the healing, like what you needed, right?
Well, yeah, 110%. And I think that's it's funny because it's the same thing, and you guys have the same experience. A young LDS kid comes into my office, high school kid, parents have the agenda. We want him to serve an LDS mission. So first thing I do when the parents walk out is I put them on a scale and I'm like, this side of the room I agree with everything that mom just said and we're bosom buddies. This side of the room, and then I drop the F bomb because they know I'm not their bishop. I'm like, I don't give an F what mom thinks. And they're like, oh, okay. So then they get honest and they're like, yeah, I don't care. And like, I don't care about church or any of it, because what they don't care about is the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'm like, cool. What do you care about? Let's just go there. Cool. You're never going to serve mission. Don't be active church. We'll figure out how to tell mom and dad. What do you actually want to do? And then the funniest thing is they go on this journey with themselves and find out they really want to go on a mission. So weird. But it's outside the expectation. And so it's right on what you're saying, Brandon. It was the shift for me of being like, am I here to do therapy? Am I here speaking to Warrior Heart? Am I here recording this podcast with you guys right now? Because I need you to see me in a certain way, because this is about us making connections professionally and getting more viewership and doing all of that. Sure, on some level, of course, that's true. But honestly, like, it's really deciding, am I here because I actually have a lot of respect for these two men and what they're doing in the world, and I just want to connect. I want to be open about my heart, right? And have the feeling, and that's a dance, right? Yeah, that's but they are opposites when you put them together.
Yeah, amen. I'm wondering if we could take kind of some of your story, Stephen, and expand it to this idea of working with the men that we work with. I think you're in the same realm as us, Brannon. I would see that what I see is a whole bunch of dormant energy and potential that is lying underneath this like level of shame. And
Preach.
And what we get with the men that at least we have coming through our doors, is exactly kind of maybe slightly different belief systems, but it all boils down to the feeling of lack of worthiness for whatever the reason is. And then men who kind of go into this place of learned helplessness, where they kind of sit on the sidelines, they try to stay, they put their candle under the bushel, so to speak, and then they just kind of go through the drudgery of, at best, their duty as a man, especially inside of like whatever church they're a part of or whatever, but their hearts are not connected. And I'm wondering, that it's almost like an epidemic that I think we're dealing with right now, with good men who don't even understand their own,
who they are,
real strength, like their own identity. And then they come into our offices and they're saying, give me the tools to not look at porn. And it's like, I sometimes wonder if, as a whole realm, we miss the boat and we try to jump in with 32 tools on how to stop looking at porn, when in reality, this is a heart issue. And I'm wondering, what do you do to try to help men access their hearts and get them connected to the true source?
Oh yeah, 100%. Porn is the symptom, right? A lot of people say it that way. I always use the analogy where there's smoke, there's fire. The smoke is the porn, the fire is the unrest emotion that you have. And we use a book we recommend all the time is John Eldridge, Wild at Heart, and it's, I always tell people, I'm like, you got to throw like a third of it out. Like, he wrote it in the 80s. There's some stuff, but like, don't throw the baby out. I feel that way about most therapy books. I'm like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, they're going to have a couple opinions. I'll also say this, and I love John Eldridge dearly. Academically, he's not the strongest writer. And so sometimes people are like, it didn't flow right. Or I'm like, I know, but just in principle. And I think what he says in principle, one of his big things is we have this question in our heart, right? Do I have what it takes? Like, do I have what it takes to be a man? And the mistake people make is they try and meet the standard. Like me, I got away with it for a while because of whatever talents I had. I can be an AP on my mission. I can do the stuff. And so I'm like, I'm meeting the standard, right? But the mistake people make is they think I'll just leave the standard. So I'll leave my church. I'll leave my industry. I'll leave my, family system. And what's ironic to me is shame is everywhere. You are operating in some social sphere. So do that however you want. I mean, I had a church leader. I went through church discipline twice, and I was disfellowshipped and excommunicated, my membership withdrawn. I had to take President say to my face, unashamed and unafraid, it's a fake light. And it's wrong that you're doing it. He thought I was making a bunch of money on it. Didn't know it's nonprofit and I don't make a dime, right? But so that is going to happen. But when that happens, men think, I can't reach the standard. So, oh, well, I guess I'll just go to the passive and the taken out and like there's something wrong, right? Then we get the other polar end where it's just violence, right? Like that being a man is the toxic masculinity, I got to have balls hanging off the back of my truck and guns and hose and I do the whole, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, take that energy and go put it back in your system. Like reconcile those two sides, right? And like people aren't generally comfortable with men in their masculinity, like in true masculinity. Like most people, that's a struggle. Most women in their marriage, that would be new, right? They most likely married a man who was shut down. And so all of a sudden he's got a heart and they're like, whoa, man, I just want you to be home on time and do the dishes. And it's like, he's happy to do that. And he's going to go start some entrepreneurial business and he's going to go play this sport, or he's going to turn your garage into a woodworking festival or whatever it is. And so for me, it's actually being willing to admit what my heart really wants. And for men to really accept the way my heart was created was not wrong. You don't have to be listening to this podcast for 2 minutes to be like, that dude's got a mouth. I had a lady once tell me, she's like, you have 2 volumes, loud and louder. I think that's accurate, right? And so when I started recovery and I'm like, oh, I'm bad, and the layer of shame you're talking about, I was like, I need to stop doing commercial real estate. I need to shut up. I need to be passive. I need to be quiet. Like everything about me is wrong. No, it wasn't. God actually made my heart big and loud with a ton of passion. I just have to be willing to do it within the system of my values.
We use our talents and our abilities to shame screen. And God gave us those talents and abilities to accomplish purpose here. And so when we have these wounds, it's like, dang, I'm good at these things. Now I can use those things to manipulate. It doesn't mean exactly what you just said. It doesn't mean when you get in recovery, you take all those talents and abilities and you just throw them out the window. It means you're using them for a different purpose now. You're using them in alignment with God as opposed to using them to defend against that shame.
Totally. And so, like, going back to that experience I had with my church leader, I didn't go scream at him. And it wasn't what the hell, bro? Here's our documents. I've never made a dime and you owe me repair and screw you, because you're right, the toxic masculinity. But I also didn't go to shut down and be like, you know what? Screw church. All church is stupid. Everyone in church is totally a hypocrite, and I'm wounded and I'm validated in that victimhood. So screw this. I'm out of here. You know what I did? I got with my bros. We can go call Kurt Frankham. He got a call before the meeting and after every time. Kurt, I don't even like showing up to this building. I feel shame in my body when I walk up here. But you know what? This is one guy. And you know what? In my masculine heart, he doesn't get to take my church from me.
Yep.
So I'm showing up anyways, and it's bad, and it's going to go bad. But I'm going to sit in my truth, and I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to speak my heart, and I'm going to be honest. And I can't tell you the validation I got from God of really being in my heart and really showing up. And I walk away from that experience more restored and more open to who I am, because I think that's the message God's trying to get deep in our heart. Like, your masculinity is not a mistake. Like, the way I made you was not incorrect. You just got to point it within the value system. And that is an often a very uncomfortable thing to do. And that's what surprises me about people's recovery, is if they actually would just do what they want, what you said, Tyler, just live the life they actually want to live, they wouldn't be acting out. They'd be fine and they'd be happy. It's they're convinced that they can't live the life they want to live because that's for some reason wrong.
I really love the direction that you're going. I think that's something that Brannon and I we're using slightly different language, but the principle here is so key. So many men are broken. They've been taken out. They're sitting on the sideline, and then they're told that the way to get better is to kill parts of themselves. And
Yes.
what you're saying is the real word that's coming to my mind is true full acceptance. And in your story, there's an acceptance of who you are, who God says you are, and then a willingness to actually then step into the identities that you receive from God. So now everything that comes to you from a church leader, from a friend, or from anybody else is just part of a data set that you take and you run back through God, and God's like, but I still see you this way. And you're, in your case, you're like, so I'm going to keep my church, and I'm going to take that leader that maybe I don't really enjoy going to see's feedback, and I'll run it through my filter and then through God's filter, and then I'll still make my decision. So there's acceptance and there's the accountability of choice. You're still making your own choices, and now you're taking the very things that most people would be told that they need to kill, and you're learning how to channel and bridle and harness those things into a power that does good in this world rather than maybe the way it's blown up in the past. But it's not killing it. It's actually accepting it and channeling it.
Yeah. In fact, I thought about naming my therapy practice after that, and we did. But that, right, because it's finding that acceptance of here. I can tell you who has benefited the most from Unashamed and Afraid: Stephen Shields. Because I have to sit in front of people who tell me they wholeheartedly believe in recovery, recovered, healed 100%, and they sit there and tell me the story. And so it brings back to me, right, the truth that I got to reconcile myself, that God believes that about me. When I have to sit here, right? And the other big thing I say about that accountability is people look at his accountability as a filter on a phone, and I tell my wife thumbs up or thumbs down this week, or my church leader thumbs up, or my parents thumb up or thumb down this week, right? This is accountability, right? I know who you guys are. We have not met in person before and had this. I know this because we were talking beforehand. My super warrior heart, good friend Sway is coming to work for Brannon in his practice. We sat there, we know it. I know the deal, right? And so in that brotherhood, right, when I have people around me who know my heart, see my heart, and that takes some work to get, by the way. You just don't walk across the street and buy it at 7-Eleven, right? When I get that brotherhood, what are the odds of me saying, hey, I just had this experience. Is this in my, how do I be accountable? Hey, James, Chris, Sway, next guy, right? And all 10 guys close to me, Kurt Franken, well, all of them close to me. If all 10 of me tell me it's north and I was thinking it was south, boy, I'm glad I have some accountability because I'm lost in my shame right now and what other people think and all that crap. But if I'm like, no, I think this church leader's in his own shame and I think he just doesn't get it. And then I go to everyone. I'm like, this is north, right? And everyone in my brotherhood and connection is like, yes, it's north. God, right? Right. And it's there. And so that brotherhood and connection is, we talk all the time at Warrior Heart that masculinity initiates masculinity. Right. And so it's like, if I want to know I'm a really good car mechanic, I got to be honest. Maybe you guys have in your background or don't. I don't care what the therapy bros think. But guess what? If I go over here next door to this transmission guy that looks like the biggest SOB with his beard and grease all over him, and he and I were to send under a car, he's like, hell yeah, brother. That's exactly how you fix the what's it called. I'd be like, for real, I'm getting my mechanic stuff on, right? Like you feel that, right? And so it's we father each other in that, right? Like we just had a conversation about the therapy world before this started, and it validated my experience that I'm like, hey, we need more abundance, less scarcity. And Brannon, you're like, reach, man, totally. You're nodding heads, and I'm like, oh, that I'm seeing it now, right? You guys, in a way, fathered me in that and helped me grow in my belief that we can change our industry and how it's working, right? And so you brought that to me in your goodness. And so there's so much that men have to offer. And it's not only that I walk around receiving in brotherhood, I give it, right? I give it and I go, I have something to offer. Look, God put real masculinity in me. I can teach you how to fish, swim, do business, whatever, right? And that validating is how we kind of stoke that fire of the masculinity God really put in us.
I just spent the weekend in an RV with 12 guys running a Ragnar.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It stunk in there. Like, But dude, my boys, like there's nothing more important to me. And I was talking to my other brother last week, and he said, it's really important to be a good husband, to have connection to other men, and to be able to talk through your stuff. And you were talking earlier about the discomfort of being masculine. If you've shown up as a weakling in your life, and your wife will crave your masculinity and at the same time be terrified of it, and your job, they'll treat you like the weakling that you showed up as. So to shift into your masculinity, it takes that support system. Masculinity bestows masculinity, and that's what you're talking about, right, Stephen?
Oh, 100%. I had at the beginning of my therapy career this very experience. I was like, hey, go big, right? And I always quote Aaron Burr from Hamilton when he first meets Hamilton, and Hamilton's like, we're doing this, right? Revolution, all that. And Burr's like, hey, talk less, smile more, shut it down, go small. And I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. So took some risks and found some people, right? And I started working at different places around the country, had different things of people who could mentor me and step in, right? And so it's that experience of having it happen. I told you with this, KF, who runs Leading Saints, right, has a ton of experience. That was my brother as I was going through church stuff that was hard for me to be like, dude, father me in this. You speak church better than I speak church, right? Pull me in. But I love, there's a Mel Robbins quote. She says, your healing does not inspire people. It confronts them.
Ooh.
And particularly with masculinity, because where I want to take huge ownership, because I've participated in it, is masculinity has harmed a lot of people in this world. And so I get in any relationship when we show up as men and I'm like, hey, this masculinity thing, I'm going to bring it out right now. Most people's experience is like, that's the person that raped me. That's the person that molested me. That's the person that controlled me. That's the person that made me feel small at work. That's the person that shamed me in church, right? So I get the discomfort with it, but it's such a reparative experience when people have healthy masculinity, a godly masculinity, and experience that. We're starving for that in this world. And the initial discomfort, like in my personal circle, do you know how many people told me to start Unashamed? I come off the mountain at boot camp. I'm not sober at all. And I'm like, I think I should share my story with the world. And I think I can do it in a way that's like vulnerable, but not vomity, because no one's speaking from the eye except for these like blogs where they won't even use their freaking name and won't even say what they're doing. And that just doesn't feel like real recovery to me. Do you think everyone in my life was like, really, yeah, idea, we support you in being masculine and putting it out there? Hell no. Everyone's like, internet's not safe and it's going to ruin your recovery and whatever. It made my recovery. Right. And it made, and that was the thing that kept me anchored and got me the community and did all the stuff. Right. And so initially it's uncomfortable. Right. My wife initially was like pissed about it. One of my buddies was like, I'll pay for the website. It's like $125. She's like, not a dime of our money will be used for that. And total fairness to her, I just destroyed her whole life. Like I just, total hall pass for her. And so my buddy's like, I'll pay for the website so she can't be mad that I bought it. Right. So like, that's how we started. Fast forward to your point about wives, right? Like initially she's like, whoa, masculinity, I'm out. I'm not doing that. Fast forward, she's been on the podcast like 3 times. She'll make an effort to come when we do our recordings here. She'll be like, hey, are people still there? Let me get a babysitter for kids. Can I come show up? Right. That's the part that, right, people really want. And frankly, it's the part when we're talking about spouses, it's the part that makes them feel safe. Right. Like as you really step out in your masculinity, that's how you're going to build trust. That's how you're going to get relationships. That's how, but it does require, like you're saying, a stepping out and doing it, Tyler. You're right on. Like I can't continue to do the passive, but say I mean it more masculine. Like whatever God's calling you into, it's time to go. It's time to go, brother.
You have to accept it. I love what you just made a distinguishing kind of thing of the world has experienced shame-based masculinity in all of its forms, either disappear.
Well said.
Or anger, but you use the word godly masculinity, and godly masculinity is a resource that it's like gold. It's something that's scarce in our world right now, and that I think both of us are kind of living a life that's that sees it and feels it and goes, we have to bring more of this. We have to develop, we have to mine more godly masculinity because it's a gift to the world. And you said the word, it's really interesting, safety. Like safety, everyone's afraid of masculinity because of the damage that it does when it's shame-based, but it actually creates safety in our world and our relationships with other people. And your example you just shared brings out a couple of those principles for you to go put yourself out into the world with the transmission guy or the church friend or somebody else. You've had to go and put different parts of yourself on display for other people and be vulnerable with them so that they can have the opportunity to let God father you through them.
Yep.
It was your willingness, your brokenness, your humility, your desire, and then your willingness to go and seek it that made a big difference because it showed the heart that's already cultivated and willing to receive. And that's something that a lot of men have a really difficult time doing right now, is finding and asking for that kind of help and that kind of fathering.
Yes. Because we were told don't do that. We're told do it alone. Right? Like, yeah, like, and this message that you should already know, right? Like, and I want to ask every man out there, where did you learn it? Who taught you? Because either your earthly father is God and he was just the freaking man and had all the pieces all the time, which even good dads don't.
I'm being with my kid.
I'm that guy for sure.
Well, okay, I found two, but other than you guys, right? There's not, right? But because I'll get with guys, or we'll be up at boot camp, and they're like, "My dad was a good dad." I'm like, "Cool. Did he ever talk to you about sex?" No, never. Well, guess you could use some fathering around that. But I'm super glad that he helped you get in your career, or did church well, or did sports well, or academics well, or it's not all or nothing, right? But it's like you have to be in community with men, and it's interesting. Even when we look at the women in this world, I'm super pro feminist movement, all of the things that have happened, and there are parts of it in today's world when we go to hyper independent. That if you look at what a lot of women in this world are doing, they're just choosing to do the masculine themselves. They're like, I don't trust the masculine, so I'll just do it. I'll get the job. I'll be a power player. I'll learn how to fix the brakes on my own car. I will do it all by myself. And it's the same equation of men saying, I'm going to do all the soft, nurturing, all the small stuff by myself. It's like that isolation in either way isn't going to work. And so I have to be willing to show up vulnerable to relationships in my shortcomings to get fathered, to get growth. And I think what is also most vulnerable for a lot of guys is to step into my gifting and my knowing. It was much easier for me to sit in a 12-step meeting and say, hello, my name is Steven, and I am an addict. It's an identity. I've screwed this stuff up. I've harmed Kayla. This is terrible. I'm that guy. Let me put my head down and pay my penance, right? And like, hopefully someone is willing to give me grace at the end of my jail sentence. It's a lot harder for me to be like, or not. I'm the host of Unashamed and Unafraid, and I think healing just happens. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to believe this message matters to the world and that someone wants to listen and that we can connect and hang out. Stepping into that masculinity and making the choice, right, to really do it, that's scary. I think it's a lot easier for men to just admit they're wrong and live in their shame, which I mean, I still do on a lot of levels.
Steven, we're running out of time, but I just want to say, like, I consider you a comrade in the battle, and I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful that you're out on the battlefield doing this work. Can you tell us a little bit about where your heart, your practice, how do people find you?
Yeah, sure, totally. So, starting at the top. So, Unashamed and Unafraid, just like you guys, podcast that's out there. It's a nonprofit, and so we do scholarships. One of the biggest scholarships we do, just because it's the biggest bang for the buck, is to Warrior Heart, and we should start doing some scholarships to your guys' retreat. That'd be cool. But and so that's the voice, and so we would just record people's real stories. You guys are going to come on our show, depending on dates when these get posted. You may have already been, but right, like, so we have people like you guys come on, and so that's the, hey, there's a hospital, believe it, It's out there. It's a choice. Warrior Heart is, I'll just guarantee it. So anyone listening, if you pay the $700, come to Warrior Heart and it was stupid, while we're there at the event or after, if it's ones I'm not at, send me a text or an email. I'll just Venmo you the money. You don't even owe me an explanation. And I'll tell you, it's not rocket science. It's men getting together in real brotherhood and asking God, how do you see me? That's it in a nutshell.
Can I say something, Stephen?
Mhm.
Tyler and I have both been to boot camps. We've been to a Warrior Heart one, and just, I mean, yeah, it changed my life. It's awesome. It's amazing, and it's really simple. It's really simple.
Yep, not rocket science. So warriorheart.com, and then Accepted is the therapy practice, and that's where we do the trauma stuff and the hands-on and the more I refer to us in therapy land as guides, because I believe people are in charge of their own healing. The goal is to fire them as fast as possible, and we do a lot of experiential stuff. And so we do a lot of, show me, don't tell me, and not a lot of the talk therapy stuff as much. Not there's anything wrong with this, just different. And so, my office here in Sandy, acceptedlife.com, and those are all the layers. So
Awesome, Stephen. Yeah, man, it's been a gift to have you on today. Thank you for your energy. I hope that our listeners, as you're listening, you can feel the energy that's coming through to us. And it's probably got some things churning inside of you. So go check out Stephen's stuff there. He is, you guys can feel, you listen to us, you feel our energy, you feel the direction we're going. He's completely aligned with the same direction. And thank you, Stephen. And to our listeners, thank you for being here with us today. And until next time, you guys keep on keeping on.
See ya.